Okay, what day is it? It's Wednesday.
Wednesday.
What does that mean?
Energy
It's Energy Wednesday.
Wednesday.
What state are we in? We're in Hawaii, the state of clean energy, right?
Right.
That's Warren Bollmeier.
It's also
Sharon
tax day too.
Moriwaki.
Did you send in your
that's
tax
right.
Oh my God,
payment
why
yet?
didn't you mention this earlier? You didn't say a word. Okay, we have Sharon Moriwaki here. She is the moving force in the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum. We have Warren Bollmeier, the moving force in the Hawaii Renewable Energy Alliance, and a powerful force also in the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum. And we have Kelly King. She is one of the founders of Hawaii Biodiesel, and another force in the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum here in Hawaii, the state of clean. Welcome, Kelly. You there?
Thank you. Aloha.
Hi, Kelly.
Here.
So the first thing you do is we don't have today a nega moment, but we can take this as a nega moment. We're taking Twitter. Okay, so everybody out there wants to communicate, ask a question, whatever, do Twitter on us. That's ThinkTech Hi, H-I, okay? That's all I want to say. All the operators are standing by. Okay, so what's the news? Kelly, you made a comment a minute ago asking about the, was it you, Sharon, about the Maui conference. That was really important and notable. So why don't you give us your short impression of how it went?
I thought it was great to have so many people from outside of Maui come and join us for the conversation here on Maui. And it was great to talk about from the perspective of the ratepayer and the customer, and also to be able to inject some of what we need to do on the policy side. And so there were great discussions. There were some great sound bites, and I thought that the energy was very dynamic, but also very cooperative.
So what does it reveal about the current state of affairs on clean energy? What did it tell you that you didn't appreciate until you went?
Well, I think one of my takeaways is that we really need our leaders at the state and county level to help move this envelope. You know, it's not gonna happen from those of us on the ground pushing forward, because we really need the states to invest, the counties to buy in, and some of them are, and some of them are in certain areas, but we still have a long way to go. And also, the other thing that I took away from it is there's still a lot of focus on price, and that if we continue to, if we move that in that direction and change the C in HCEI, which stands for Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative, from clean to cheap, we're going to be in big trouble, and we're not going to meet our goals. So I think that's a huge takeaway, is that it can't be all about the money. There needs to be more discussion on what we're trying to achieve for the environment, what we're trying to achieve for our local economy, and bringing the dollars home for both food and fuel.
Yeah. One more thing, and how did the Next Era deal play in the discussion at this conference? How did it affect your perception of what's going on?
I don't think I was affected one way or the other, because there's still a lot to be seen on whether it's going to happen. There seems to me to still be a lot of skepticism on the state level with our state legislators. Certainly a lot of skepticism on the ground level. So I think I was more interested in what the people who are really in charge right now have to say about things.
Yeah. Well, Sharon goes first. It's something that she raised her hand.
I was just raising my finger.
I was first.
All right.
No,
Sharon would like to remark about what you said, Kelly.
Yeah, Kelly had a good panel on Maui's take on where they're going clean energy in the morning session, and a number of issues brought up by people in the business, like the soda company, and how that impacts on price, but also seeing the need for sustainability, so renewable fuels, and how the difficulties in kind of the balancing of that. And I don't know if you had some remarks as well, and I thought that would be interesting to bring forward as we go forward, is that it's cost, but it's also the sustainable environment, and looking for the next generation and what it means for the next generation.
Right, and I think, one of the things that she said, that Kathy Nobriga said, from her perspective as a business owner, is that they need more education. And part of the discussion was, how do we get them that education when everybody's so busy running their business and working hard? And so programs like this are very important, but even more so the long distance availability, and something that they can turn on maybe while they're working to get some information.
That's a good idea.
Warren, you had some thoughts on all this?
Yeah, I think each of these meetings kind of has its own energy, and if we go back to what
That's
happened.
not a pun, by the way.
I never deal in puns. I'm just not that punny.
No.
Anyway, the last year it was like, Hiko let it out, was like, the future's not what it used to be. That was last year.
I remember
Okay,
that,
so
yeah.
this year, it was more like, what do we want for our utility in the future? And so there's a clear momentum, like, we're not going back, we're only moving forward. So it's like, is our utility of the future gonna pay attention to the customer? And there were a lot of stuff on that. And then, like, you imagine there was a sales pitch from Hiko and NextEra about how they're gonna be better and so on. So it was a lot of talk, and I think they're getting better on the talk, but I think what my bottom line was is people were saying, well, where's the walk? We wanna see you walk the walk. So we're now, HRA is now one of the interveners in this NextEra docket, is what I call it. And so there's going to be a lot of conversation. It's going to be very intense for the next several months, and because it seems that the commission does want to try to make a decision about whether this company should be the next HECO. And it will be the next HECO. They're not going to change the name. I guess it'd be too hard to go around repainting all the trucks and stuff. But anyway.
While you're here and while you're talking about that, what position is the Hawaii Renewable Energy Association taking on this deal?
Well, that's an interesting question, and we don't have one now, so we're not taking a position. I think we're going into the docket with an open mind. There's a set of issues that have been put forward by the commission. We're all supposed to ask questions of the applicants. Now, the applicants in this case are both Hawaiian Electric and also NextEra. And so it's considered a merger. The NextEra is not actually buying any assets. What they're doing is they're swapping stock, and that's in the parlance of one of the ways that mergers defined. So you have maybe a different ownership of the shareholders, and ultimately it's the share owners that own all the assets. And then of course, you always want to see, well, what's the balance between shareholder interest and customers, also called the ratepayers, because since they pay all the bills.
People say, and I think you alluded to this a minute ago, is that this deal, this approval process is more than what it was originally conceived to be, thought to be, and that everything, even modification of the utility, is on the table. Is this true? I mean, you're an intervener, so what are your...
Well, I think that's a good question. It hasn't really been answered yet. But the main thing, my takeaway on this, I can go back to what Randy Iwasi said, our new chair, when he was being asked this question, what he thought was going to, what's the criteria? And he said, and I'm just paraphrasing, well, fitness. Is this company fit to take over and do the job in the utility? So that we want. So number one, what is the job in the utility? And then also number two, so it's really only two criteria. It's interesting. I mean, overarching criteria is public interest. And he said, now that grabs me. See, so that means that maybe they're fit, but are they the ones that are best going to be able to meet the scope of work that is in the public interest? I guess that would be the easiest way to say it.
What is exactly the definition of public interest here?
Well,
Sorry, Kelly, we'll get back to you in a minute.
Oh, I think that's the $64 million question, so I'm
yeah,
really...
and there's always the question of who determines what public interest is. And so I think that the commission has been and will be very aggressive in reaching out to the community. So regardless of everything else that we're doing between all the parties, and there's now like 33 parties, so it's pretty massive.
Are you asking document requests?
Well, yeah, you can, that
Are
could be one.
you?
Right now, I haven't determined that. But we've got a period all the way through the end of August into September to ask these kinds of questions. It's called, you're a lawyer, right? Discovery?
Yeah,
Right,
sure.
so, and then after that, the commission's gonna be reviewing things and determining when we're gonna have a hearing and stuff on it. But I think they're looking to see expressions from people that will come to these meetings. They're gonna be on all the islands, including Molokai and Lanai. There's not a schedule for this, but yeah.
Well, the PUC is gonna go around island to island?
Yeah, they're gonna have essentially a hearing on each island.
Yeah, interesting.
That's kind of unprecedented in itself.
Well,
I
it
think.
tends to bring the islands together, or at least
Yeah.
let them speak.
So to kind of help you segue a little bit here, it's kind of like, what role does industry have in the way of doing wind and solar, and what role do the general area of biomass and biofuels, renewable fuels, if you will, have to play in this arena? And when it comes to electrical sector, they can be fuels for what we would normally call a conventional generator. So you could have biodiesel replacing diesel fuel, and that could be part of the mix. But see, we have to determine, how much
Why
of
do I
that's gonna
feel
be.
there's more questions in the air now than there ever were?
Yeah.
Why do I feel that?
Well, it's
there are.
because
I think there
this
are.
monopoly has been going on for so many years, and now we're talking about a possible change of control. That's what they call it, and the commission's been pretty forward in some of their recent orders about the lack of performance on the part of the existing Hawaiian Electric. So this is an opportunity to see, well, is this other company going to be better fit? And are they the ones that people believe are going to truly listen to the customers? And
Is
that's
that what
part of
public interest is, listening
Yeah,
to
that's
the
got to be
customer?
that's got to
Well,
be part of it. Yeah.
acting.
Let me interject
But-
here because part of public interest also is fulfilling the goals of the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative.
That's right, yeah.
State law. So, and a lot of the public doesn't even know what that is. But it is state law that we're working towards a 70% renewable energy goal by the year 2030. I don't know if you read Henry Curtis's recent blog in the last 2 days.
Why don't you summarize it for us, Kelly?
Well, Eric Gleason was quoted in a video at a recent meeting within the last month as saying, "I wouldn't want those things on my rooftop," referring to solar panels, and saying that LNG really is not that bad for the environment. So, that speaks to the question of, are they really as renewable as their TV ads are portraying them to be? And are we going to, with that takeover, are we going to meet those goals with renewable energy? We still, the docket is still open for the HECO contract for CIP. Now that, by PUC rules, that power plant at Campbell Industrial has to run on biodiesel. And so it's got to come from somewhere. But, it's the bottom line is that it's been signed, but it still needs approval from the PUC. So, it's a little nervous for us to know that this contract needs to be signed, is going to go into effect November 1st, and yet the potential takeover entity really isn't that into renewables, or a major person who's heading up that entity for Hawaii doesn't appear to be. So, I think when we talk about public interest, we have to look at, why did we enact the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative? What are the goals of that? And are we aligning these kinds of mergers and business propositions and our legislation and our state contracts with those goals? Because if one of the goals is to be, what the 70%, has been stated that 30% of that comes from energy efficiency. So I guess we're using 2007 as a baseline, and 30%, we're going to be 30% more efficient. But then the 40% is a displacement by renewable energy, whether it's wind or solar or biomass, or but the energy would be created by renewable sources. And so what we're looking at, if we're looking at a 40% displacement just in the sector of biofuels, and we don't even have we have a 0% mandate in our diesel component, how are we going to get there by the year 2030? That's only 15 years away. We haven't even taken the first step to for the mandate. We have a mandate for ethanol, but there is no ethanol production here. So those kinds of things don't, in my mind, align with our state goals, and we have to look at the overall picture and address all of these different areas.
Yeah, and what comes to me on this is, yes, of course, it has to be in the best interests of the public interest. But in order to actually get to that, we need to know what the public expects, what it wants, but we don't. Sorry, but all our issues are up in the air, so it's hard to figure out whether a given company can do what we expect it to do when we ourselves don't know what we expect it to do. I think there's a problem here logically, but I'd like you to think about that for 1 minute, Kelly. I know you have an answer already, but because we can take a break, see, and when we come back, give us your answer, and then we're going to call on Sharon. Okay, this is Hawaii, the state of clean energy, if you didn't know. And we're talking about, among other things, incentives for local renewable fuels. We'll get to that with Kelly King, who joins us by Skype from Maui, and Warren Bollmeier, the Hawaii Energy, Renewable Energy, what?
Bollmeier.
What?
Bollmeier.
Bollmeier. Oh, I did that to you last time.
It's a Meister.
A friend of mine.
Meister is like a master.
Okay, we have to take a break. Yeah. And Sharon Moriwaki. We'll be right back.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Ethan Allen. I host Likeable Science on ThinkTech Hawaii, and I do this because I care about science literacy in Hawaii. I want to spread the understanding that science is a vital and interesting part of everyone's life. I want to make sure the broadest possible spectrum of people understand the beauty and the value of science and realize that science plays out each and every day of their lives. I want you to understand that science is fun. So we bring onto this show each week guests who are scientists, from astronomers to zoologists, and we talk about what they do and how they do it. But most importantly, we talk about why you should care about their work, why you should see that their work has value and impact on your life. So I hope you'll join us Fridays, 1 p.m. here on ThinkTech Hawaii. You can watch us via live stream. You can watch us recorded on Olelo, and you can see us each week. We hope you'll join us.
One, bingo, blast off. Here we are in Hawaii, the state.
Aloha.
I get Kelly King's reaction to all of that, but you know what? I'd like to ask Kelly King a question. Do we know what we want? Do we know what we expect? Does the public really know what it wants? And if not, then how can we possibly determine whether a given suitor is capable of satisfying the public interest?
Well, I think individual people know what they want, but as a whole, the way the public decides what it wants is it hires, or rather elects, representatives to come together to create laws and regulations that express what we want to see in our society. And one of those is the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative. The people that we elected to represent us to make state policy came together and said, this is what the public appears to want, held public hearings, talk to their constituents. And so we have the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative. So I believe people want clean energy, and I believe it's in the best interest of the public. You may not want, as an individual, you may not like your neighbor, you may not want them to live there, but state law, the leaders of our state and country have gotten together and said, but in the best interest of the public, you cannot kill that person, or you can't steal his stuff or kick him out of his house. That's not in the best interest of the public. So to me, it's already been expressed in state law with the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative. How we get there, the roadmap to getting there is all over the place right now. And that's where, you're seeing all these questions are coming up. And what we need is something like what we're doing on the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum, which is a renewable energy benefits study. And we're at the very beginning phases where we're trying to figure out the methodology. But if we understand as a public, and it's it falls on all of our shoulders to get this information out there. But the information that we need to get to the public is what are the benefits? How will it bring more economy, more jobs, a cleaner environment, alleviate things like oil spills and wastewater spills and things that cost a lot of money to clean up, because that's another drain on the public interest. How will it benefit us as far as energy security if we have another dock strike? I mean, we just had this huge dock strike on the West Coast that cost a lot of businesses over here money. So all of those things are coming into play, and if we can show that the investments in renewable energy by the state of Hawaii or by the counties will pay back by helping us solve some of these issues and giving us a backup should we experience a huge port strike or some disaster at our ports. That, to me, that's where we kind of sort through what is real and what is not real. And the other thing I talked about in my panel on the technology was on the technology readiness. Is that there needs to be, and I think the previous governor touched on this in the beginning of his campaign and wanted to put together some kind of a commission of research experts that would come up with these assessments of technology and technology readiness, and what works and what doesn't work, because we've been bombarded as a state by all kinds of proposals and grant.
Has that happened? Let me turn it over to Sharon for a minute to try to get some input.
I don't think so.
A lot
no.
of companies come in and say, we're going to do this, that, or the other to make biofuels, and the technology readiness is kind of questionable. The technology may or may not have been figured out yet.
Okay, Sharon, let me ask you, hold for a second, Kelly. Let me ask you, what about the question of public interest? What troubles me, I think, is that if the public interest should be expressed in the law, the public goes to the legislature, all sides of this issue, and they ask the legislature to pass a bill, such as the, production tax credit for renewable energy, and it passes the bill. So now we have state policy. And the same thing with the new energy agreement, with the goals and whatnot. So is the question whether NextEra or any other potential buyer can follow the law? Because that's where it's all sitting, it's in the law. And if NextEra doesn't follow the law, you can bet the PUC will be taking action on that. So I'm really lost on what public interest is here. Do you know?
I think, well, no, I don't know, but I think that you've got this broad policy of public interest of what's good for the public, and it's cheaper or not cheaper, but a more affordable but cleaner energy, and that's a policy. The devil is always in the details. Okay, how do you get there? And I think that's where the trade-offs and the actual implementation part of it is where you have to look at what are they doing is in the public interest or not. And again,
suppose I'm NextEra and I get up and I say to all you guys, I say, look, I will follow the law. Whatever the legislature tells me to do, I will do it. Whatever the PUC tells me to do, I will do it. Okay? So, and I can. I have the money, I have the people, I have the expertise, I have all the resources I need to do it, and I'm telling you now that I will do it.
Well, then there's got to be some safeguards or some accountability to say that you have done it. And if not, then...
But you don't really mean it when you say that.
You have to say, okay, you didn't do it, and so what are the penalties, or what are the sanctions, or what are the things when you don't do it?
Well, and show us a plan.
I think
the plan,
Well, I tell you, the plan is to follow the law. That's the plan.
That's not detailed enough.
Not detailed enough. The devil is always in the details. But Kelly, tell us about biofuels. You've been working on this for many years, and we see a bill coming through that will give production tax credit to local producers of renewable fuels. How is that going, and what you see as coming out of this year's legislature on that bill, which you've been working on for a while?
Well, it looks promising, but I've been here before, and I'm actually starting to feel like Charlie Brown, and I keep kicking the football, and someone keeps pulling it out at the last minute. Hopefully, this will be the year that it actually passes. But we see this You know, I've spoken to other people who are trying to get into biofuels here. You know, we all see this as an investment by the state, and has a huge return in terms of revenue that's kept here in terms of energy security.
Tell us how it works, Kelly.
How biofuels work?
No, how the bill works.
The bill, if
Oh,
it
the
passed, what would happen?
Yeah, the
That's
bill is
different
actually
than
a
now.
tax credit based on gallons produced. And it describes a level of like 15 billion BTUs minimum per year that you have to be producing, because they're trying to ensure that it goes to commercial biofuel producers, you know, legitimate biofuel producers. So that number of BTUs, if it were biodiesel, for instance, it would be about 125,000 gallons a year. So that's a pretty small amount that you need to make, but it makes you bigger than a backyard brewer, which is what we call people who make their own biodiesel. So, you know, for every gallon, you would get X amounts of cents. And right now, that line is empty in the bill, yet to be filled in. It's been at 30 cents before, and it's been at 20 cents. So, you know, we'd like them to go up to 30 cents, because the larger investment, the quicker the return, and the quicker you're gonna inspire more biodiesel production or biofuel production in the state of Hawaii, which helps with our energy security. I mean, we just recently had an incident, and I wanted to send out a press release, so this is kind of news, but I was asked not to focus on the recent power outages that happened throughout January on the island of Oahu. I didn't want to make people look bad, but there was a big push on the CIP, the Campbell Industrial Plant, the Park plant. The peaking plant is what it's called. So it fires up during peak hours usually, but it also is a backup for when other power plants go down. That plant has to run on biodiesel, and currently that contract is held by a mainland supplier. We've gotten a waiver from that mainland supplier to be able to supply it, replace some of that supply with local biodiesel. So we've been supplying some of that from Pacific Biodiesel and Big Island Biodiesel. And when the recent blackouts happened and they needed to fire up that plant quickly, we were able to get them the fuel, you know, an extra 100,000 gallons that they needed that month in 4 days, which would have taken 3 weeks had it needed to come from the mainland. So, you know, we're already seeing benefits of energy security with local biofuels. Of course, I wanted to shout it from the rooftops, and we're kind of in this, you know, gray area. PICO has been really supportive and buying a lot of as much local fuel as they can. So we don't want to make them look bad, but everybody, you know, in the know, who's part of this entity and that entity, understands that, you know, these are small examples of what we may need in the future as we have more and more of these incidents. And having the fuel on island or even on the next island is hugely beneficial. And you know, anybody whose lights went out and would have been out for another week or 2 or 3 would probably say, yeah, it's in the best interest of the public to get more local biofuels. Yeah. So this is what we're looking at. And the production tax credit.
But the bill, does it change existing law? I mean,
Yes.
What is the state of the law right now with respect to tax credits on renewable fuel?
Right now, there's a law, in statute, an investment tax credit for ethanol facilities. So this has been on the books for at least a dozen years, longer, I think. But this would have given 30 cents per gallon to the developer of an ethanol production facility. And
but there are no ethanol facilities.
There are none. And the fact that this has been on the books for over a dozen years and still nobody's built an ethanol facility really tells you a lot about how difficult it is to develop that. I mean, the energy balance for ethanol is 1 to 1.6, whereas the energy balance for biodiesel is 1 to 5.5. So you're talking about a much larger return in terms of energy in and energy out with biodiesel. And that's why we can do biodiesel on the level we're doing. If you had an ethanol plant here, you would have to have 30 to 50 million gallon production to make money because the margins are so small.
We're going to take another short break.
This bill would...
That's Kelly King. She's joins us by Skype from Maui. She's one of the founders of Hawaii Biodiesel. We have Sharon Moriwaki here and Warren Bollmeier here, both with the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum. and Warren is also with the Hawaii Renewable Energy Alliance. We're talking about the production tax credits for renewable fuels, and there's a bill pending right now. We'll get more into that as soon as we come back from this break.
Aloha, my name is Paul Jackson, better known as PJ, and my local interest is in sports. I have my own sports radio show at KWAI AM 1080 that you can stream live. I also have my own website, pjsportsradio.com. We have live guests in studio, and we talk about discussions and topics that everyone wants to know locally here on the islands. We cover everything from surfing to basketball to whatever's going on locally, sports-wise. We try to do our best and cover the topics in depth as much as we can. Once again, thank you for joining PJ here on Hawaii Sports Update. Mahalo.
Aloha, my name is Josh Green. I'm a senator from the Big Island. I work in the ER there. But on Tuesday afternoons, I get to come and spend 45 minutes to an hour with Jay Fidell and the ThinkTech staff. They're terrific professionals. They help us to bring some of the leading cutting-edge topics here across our state to you. So you can join us at our show on healthcare in Hawaii to talk with leaders from across all the spectrum of health in our state, or you can join us for any other show where we talk about economic development or tourism or some really eclectic programs too. So really, we'd love to see you here on our show. Thanks for joining us and thanks for supporting us.
Kelly.
Okay, we're back. We're live by Skype from Maui, and Sharon Moriwaki and Warren Bollmeier talking about production tax credits for renewable fuels. You want to continue your thought, Kelly?
Okay, well, the biggest difference, I think, between this and the existing law is the existing law is an investment tax credit, which means you need to build the building, you need to build the plant, and then you get paid for 30 cents per gallon of capacity. The production tax credit pays on, it's a support per gallon of production. So you actually have to make fuel. I mean, the goal of building any biofuel plant hopefully would be to produce biofuels. So the production tax credit is inherently an accountability system. You won't get the tax credit unless you actually produce the fuel.
So who would oppose this bill to, provide a better incentive for biofuel?
Well, I don't think they would oppose it to provide a better incentive. I think they would oppose it to keep money from, the tax credits. I mean, we've heard from, and Warren can speak to this, we've heard from the Tax Foundation that they just don't like tax credits, and so they've come up with some arguments which, in review don't seem to make sense to, because, their arguments like there's no accountability. Well, accountability is inherent in it, because you won't get the tax credit unless you produce the fuel. So there's the lack of understanding of the difference between a production tax credit and an investment tax credit. And then, the other part is, how difficult it would be to oversee, for DBED to oversee and create the forms and create the oversight. Well, DBED inventory is all fuel that's made in the state of Hawaii anyway. It's in the state tax, the fuel tax base. And so those things are being done anyway. They're also being done on a federal level, so it's not rocket science. You don't have to reinvent the system.
So let's assume they put in the blank 30 cents, 30%.
30 cents.
What's that going to cost the state? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, we know
It's
it's
a cap.
capped. See, that's the thing about this bill is it caps, so.
How much is the cap?
Well, per project, it's $3 million and a total of $12 million in aggregate, so
A
The
year.
total amount.
per year.
A
The
year.
total amount that this could cost
The
the
state,
taxpayer state of Hawaii is $12 million.
per year.
That's peanuts.
Well,
It's-
let me,
I mean, against the development of renewable energy,
right.
that's peanuts.
well,
Well,
and,
what's the big shindig about it?
Well,
We shouldn't be arguing that.
okay,
Maybe
you're right.
50 million would be more appropriate.
Right, well, I think there's a little bit of concern, well, there's a lot of concern in some quarters that, because the lack of an understanding of what a cap does for you, because if it's uncapped, like the solar part of the renewable energy technologies income tax credit, was that it was a gold rush, it did exactly what you wanted. You wanted to incentivize stuff. Well, then it turns out there was more like $100 or $200 million that went out the door over a period of a couple of years maybe. So with the cap, this is not gonna happen, and it gets paid out over 5 years. So there's various views on this, however, is like, well, how do we enforce this cap. And that's one reason why, in the case of the renewable credit, they decided not to put a cap on it because, well, you'd have to have maybe some sort of queue, right? If you're, and then how much should the cap
Yeah,
be?
how do you know
So
when
now we
you
got like
out of
50,000
money?
systems, and so what I've been saying is that in my wildest dreams, 10 years, 15 years from now, we might have like 10 new biofuel, renewable fuel facilities, 10, okay? Not 50,000, you know. The administration also should be really straightforward because the producer, say like the Kings or a producer, they would file a request, we want to apply for this, and they fill out a form, and then once they say when we're going to start producing, and then they report the production to DBED, and DBED certifies what the production was. And by the way, they have to do reports to the feds. Kelly can talk more about that. So it's not like DBED has to go out there and install their own flow meter and see exactly how much fuel was produced. And then and then all goes over at the right time to DOTAX, Department of Taxation, say, okay, based on this, here's what you should pay them for this year's worth of fuel delivery. And again, if they don't produce, they don't get paid.
Yeah.
So there's also concern about the state of the technology. Well, we've got proven technology here. There's been other companies trying to bring stuff that was unproven. But so with an investment tax credit, there's a possibility that something can be built and then not used, and you would have paid out this credit. So in the meantime, again, the developer, like the Kings have done, they assume a lot of risk. So you can talk more about that. Now, I think the important thing, though, from an overall broad policy standpoint, is what's going on here with a mandate for fuels. You help create the need for the product, just like the RPS, the Renewable Portfolio Standards, does for electricity. And then you have supporting tax credits to help bring the cost down where appropriate. And so with that, this is a very strong signal to the market. So what I was saying, if we repeal...
You support the bill.
Right, of course. But there was also a bill this year to repeal the E10 mandate. That bill died. But say you take away the mandate, and then you take away, and you don't allow a different form of credit that could actually be used, well, what kind of message does that send in the market? And what we've learned is...
If this bill passes, Warren, will this eliminate the ethanol? It would replace it,
This
right?
replaces the E10.
Yeah.
So-
No. It doesn't replace the mandate. It replaces the form of credit.
The credit
That
for
goes
ethanol
away
goes
as
away.
a facility. It's actually a facility
So
tax
the
credit.
investment tax credit morphs into
The production.
this
tax.
production.
It's eliminated and it's replaced.
Okay, now suppose this bill doesn't pass, what happens then?
Well, then you still have the existing ethanol
Oh, that's a
facility
really bad
credit.
result.
Yeah, which
And then
nobody uses.
yeah.
You know, the thing is.
So if you don't want anything to happen,
Yeah.
that's what you do.
Okay, well, I mean, you know, we get lost in austerity. Everybody feels terrific about austerity, but nothing happens. You know, to me, if you have an initiative like energy, which is the most significant initiative in our state's history as a state, anyway, maybe longer, then you put your money where your mouth is. You make it happen.
Yeah.
And you don't worry about spending a dime too much. You make it happen. You put every resource you can put into it.
Yeah.
And this kind of nickel-dime business really slows us down.
Well-
The only way you're going to get industry to turn, like the battleship, is you put incentives in. Everybody knows that, especially in high-tech industries. So, Kelly, if there's anything I'm saying you don't agree with, speak up.
DBED itself was just speaking on a call yesterday about the multipliers, and so they understand that for every dollar that stays in the state,
Yeah,
this
that's fine.
multiplier effect of $3 to $5. So you're creating enormous wealth by this little, like you said, peanuts investment. You're gonna it's an investment. You're staking the market, and you're going to reap the benefits of more income. And we have a great story. I won't go into the whole thing right now, but one of our employees, I just found out last week, had been homeless for 3 months. And after 3 months of working for us on the Big Island, he's now renting a home, moved his family in there,
That's a
getting
nice
on
story.
welfare. I mean, so you've got these. I mean, it couldn't be in a better place either for what we're trying to do, because being on the Hilo side, that's traditionally been depressed without high-level jobs, is a bonus on top of a bonus. So we're seeing that a lot with our employees, that we're actually bringing people with talent who are in unfortunate situations and costing the state money, and being able to give them jobs and security and those kinds of things. So that's a big part of what we're trying to do here with the green economy.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that this would, at least by the bill or by your perception of it, would only apply to legitimate biofuel producers. And I recall there was an issue along those lines when this bill or its previous version was pending a couple of years ago. So what is a legitimate biofuel producer and what is not a legitimate biofuel producer?
A legitimate biofuel producer is one who produces biofuel that meets the standard. It's called ASTM, the American Society of Testing Materials, and that is the organization that also creates standards for diesel fuel and gasoline. So if you meet the standard, you're a legitimate biodiesel producer. And if you're according to this bill, if you're making at least 125,000 gallons of biodiesel, then that puts you, in the realm of legitimate and commercial, so that you qualify for these tax credits.
So if I'm a brand new entrepreneur, want to, do right by biofuel, and I want to start at ground zero, I have to get up to 125,000 gallons before I get the credit?
Right.
Okay.
And you better have a.
It's like how you know when you go get a loan, you have to have the money to get the
prove your
loan,
bona
right? You don't
fides.
get a
Well,
loan
but
when you don't have money.
You better have a technology that works too, and that's what had happened, and you see this a lot. And the state kind of gets in a little bit of a quandary here on how to deal with this, because on the one hand, you'd like to enforce some sort of a criteria, but then if later on this guy, gets hampered in doing a project, then can he sue the state because he wouldn't let him do it because they didn't think his technology was right? Well, see, the beauty of the production tax credit is you're not gonna get there unless you have a technology that works, and that's another one of the beauty.
Right, well, you want to make sure that you're using the credit the right
Yeah,
place and it has the desired effect.
By the way, just to let you know, in the scope of things, when we started our first biodiesel plant on Maui 20 years ago, it was the production level was 250,000 gallons a year.
Right.
So that is not a huge amount, and that was considered small in demonstration size.
Right.
Well, Kelly, before we leave you, let me ask, what are the prospects here? Who's the champion or champions? Mike Gabbard a champion? Is Chris Lee a champion?
Yeah, champion. Mike Gabbard actually drafted the bill. Chris Lee has been a champion. So both heads of both chairs of the energy committees and the vice chairs have been supportive. Sylvia Luke has certainly been supportive to this point. I mean, a lot's going to depend on who gets into that conference committee next, and what the arguments are. But the other issue is that will it be refundable or not refundable? And we were pushing for refundable because that's really going to move the envelope. That's where you get the investors' interest.
Right, that's when you get the investors,
Right. Non-refundable, a lot of times your investors might not have that viability to even use the tax credit.
especially offshore.
Right.
We're having a program on offshore investment, by the way, tomorrow.
Nice
I don't know if
segue.
you'll be in town.
Nice segue,
Good segue. Tomorrow in the Lanier K at 11:30, it's called Offshore Investment in Hawaii. How can we better manage it? And it really applies across the board to so many deals and opportunities and the needs of the state for capital, which, even from the beginning of the 221 era, we never had enough capital, and we don't have enough capital now. Okay, so now it's your turn, Sharon. As my co-host, it is your obligation to summarize this discussion.
We went all
Wrap it
around
up.
the map. But I think the bottom line is that we do have a law, as Kelly said, the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative. So we have to keep our eye on the prize. And I think, as Kelly mentioned, when we were in Maui, she remembered when the first biodiesel plant was opened, that Senator Inouye said, don't blink, keep your eye on the prize. Even if fuel prices go down, we still need to keep moving ahead on renewables. So I think biofuels, anything locally produced, we should be supporting.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We all agree. It's like the choir, though. We all agree.
We all agree.
We want to see that bill pass.
We'll move forward.
Okay, Sharon Moriwaki and Warren Bollmeier and Kelly King, thank you very much,
Thanks,
everybody.
Kelly.
This
All
is
right,
Hawaii, the state of clean energy, and we're talking about production tax credits for renewable fuels and other digressions. Thank you so much, everybody.
All right.
Okay,
Aloha.
aloha.
Till next time.
Aloha.
Aloha.